There's a compound derived from purified pig brain tissue that's been used in European hospitals for more than 60 years. And patients who took it after a stroke or a brain injury didn't just recover, some of them came back sharper than they were before the injury ever happened. That's one of 4 peptides I want to show you today. Another one is being studied for Alzheimer's. And in early animal research, it didn't just slow memory loss, it appeared to start reversing it. Now, if you're over 40 and you've noticed your memory slipping, your focus fading, words sitting right on the tip of your tongue, you've probably been told it's just aging, that there's nothing you can do about it. Don't think that's the whole story. In 15 years of prescribing peptide therapy, I've watched these compounds do things no standard prescription can do for the brain. So today, I'm going to walk you through all 4, where the research actually stands, and the one foundational mistake that make every single one of them useless if you get it wrong. Let's start with the one physician's nickname, the brain's personal trainer. Here's the strange part about the first peptide. It was never intended to make healthy brains sharper. That happened completely by accident. Back in the 1950s, a small Australian research team was studying it in people with serious neurological damage. Stroke patients, brain injury survivors, people in real cognitive decline. Their only goal was simple. Could this help damaged brain cells recover? But as the research went on, doctors noticed something they didn't expect. Some patients weren't just recovering what they lost, their processing speed, their memory, their ability to hold on to information, all of it came back stronger than their baseline. And that surprise is exactly why this compound is still one of the most fascinating and most debated in all of brain medicine today. So what is it? It's called cerebrolysin. Cerebrolysin is a mixture of tiny neuropeptides and amino acid fragments taken from purified pig brain tissue. They were designed to mimic your brain's own natural growth factors, the signals it uses to repair, maintain, and rebuild itself. And here's the one word I want you to remember: BDNF. Think of BDNF as fertilizer for your brain. And here's the part most people miss. It's the same molecules that exercise, fasting, and deep sleep all boost naturally. The problem? After 40, your body tends to make less and less of it. That matters because BDNF is what keeps your brain plastic, able to rewire itself, learn, and bounce back from mental fatigue. When that signal drops, everything feels harder. Learning takes more effort. Focus gets shakier. And recovering from a long day takes longer than it used to. Cerebrolysin is essentially trying to flood your brain with that fertilizer again. That's why patients who use it often report sharper focus, better mental stamina, and noticeably better recall. But hold on, because there's a catch with cerebrolysin that quietly disqualifies a huge number of people watching this. It was built for serious brain damage, stroke, traumatic injury. So if you're a relatively healthy person over 40 who can't just focus and you assume the problem is your brain's wiring, you might be looking in the wrong place entirely. Because for a lot of people, the real culprit isn't wiring at all. It's stress. And here's something that most people don't realize. Chronic stress just doesn't feel bad. It can physically shrink the part of your brain responsible for memory. No amount of peptide will fix a brain that's stuck in constant fight or flight. So what handles that? That's exactly what peptide 2 was built for. This one, I'll name right up front. It's called Selank. Physicians call it the brain's stress shield. But the fascinating part isn't its name, it's how it works. Because Selank pulls off something that sounds almost contradictory. It calms you down without slowing you down. Most anti-anxiety drugs hit the brakes hard, quiet your anxiety, but they also leave you foggy, flat, or sluggish. Selank appears to do the opposite. It was developed in the 1990s by the Russian Institute of Molecular Genetics, and they didn't stumble upon it like cerebrolysin. They built it on purpose. They started with a molecule your body already makes, called tufsin, which normally helps regulate your immune system. Then they re-engineered it so instead of working on your immune system, it could cross into the brain and influence your stress response directly. So how does that turn into focus? Instead of shutting down the brain, Selank appears to regulate the systems that control how calm or how reactive you feel. That includes GABA, your brain's main calming, and serotonin, which steadies your mood. The result? Less mental noise, stronger resilience under pressure, and the ability to think clearly when the stakes are high. But here's the honest limitation. Most of the research on Selank comes out of Russian labs. The findings are promising, but we don't fully understand its long-term effects across different populations. And your response depends on your own baseline, your anxiety, your sleep, your current medications. So Selank isn't a magic focus switch. It's a stress soothing tool that may sharpen cognition in the right person. But what about the people who sleep fine and manage their stress and still feel like their brain just isn't connecting the dots anymore? That's where the third one comes in, and it's the strangest of them all. Everything I told you so far follows the normal rules of how peptides behave. This next one breaks almost all of them. It's called DIHEXA, and it may be the most fascinating compound on this entire list. Here's why. Cerebrolysin works by mimicking repair signals. Selank works by calming your stress response. DIHEXA operates at a deeper level entirely, actual structure of learning. Targets something called synaptogenesis. A synapse is the junction between where one brain cell passes to signal another. You have hundreds of trillions of them, and the density of that network is basically what determines how fast you think and how reliably you remember. When that network thins out, you start to see conditions like Alzheimer's. DIHEXA appears to stimulate the brain to physically grow new connections, not just maintain the ones you already have. And here's the part that made researchers take notice. They weren't even trying to build a focus enhancer. They were studying brain regeneration in diseases like Alzheimer's. And in those early animal models, DIHEXA didn't just slow cognitive decline. It appeared to start reversing it. There's one more thing that makes it unusual. It appears to be orally active. That's generally rare for a peptide. Most get broken down in your digestive system, which is why something like cerebrolysin has to be injected. DIHEXA seems to survive that and even cross the blood-brain barrier. But I have to be clear here, DIHEXA is highly experimental because it acts on growth and repair pathways. There are real concerns, including the risk of unwanted cell growth. Cells dividing or spreading when they're not supposed to. That's a risk we're still working to understand. So now we have one that repairs, one that calms, and one that rebuilds. What if there's one that did a little of all three? That brings us to the last peptide. And honestly, if you took the best of the three and combined them into one compound, you'd end up with something close to this. Cerebrolysin repairs, Selank calms, DIHEXA rebuilds. This one protects and enhances at the same time. It's called Semax. In 15 years of practice, it might be the most well-rounded brain peptide I've come across. Like cerebrolysin, it wasn't discovered while chasing cognition. It came out of research on brain injury and stroke recovery. Researchers wanted to know when the brain is starved of oxygen or blood flow, can we protect it and help it heal faster? And once again, something unexpected showed up. Patients were not only recovering, they were reporting better focus, more alertness, clearer thinking. Semax was developed in Russia by modifying a small fragment of natural hormone called ACTH, the hormone your brain uses to manage your stress response. They took a tiny piece of it and changed it so it would stop acting like a stress hormone and instead influence brain function directly. So unlike a stimulant, Semax doesn't force dopamine out. It appears to fine-tune how effectively your dopamine signals work, which may improve drive and focus without overstimulation. But I'll be straight with you. Semax doesn't have one clean mechanism. Researchers think it may also affect inflammation and blood flow in the brain, and there's no single tidy explanation for how all of that becomes better focus. So it's not a guaranteed enhancer either. Whether it works for you depends on your sleep, your stress, your inflammation, your vascular health, your overall brain chemistry. And that right there is the whole point. Because here's the foundational mistake I promised you at the very beginning. People chasing the peptide, completely ignoring the soil it's planted in. Remember the fertilizer? You can pour the most advanced growth signal on Earth onto your brain, but if your sleep is broken, your blood sugar is swinging, and your hormones have flatlined, you're fertilizing dead ground. None of these four are magic on their own. One repairs, one calms, one may rebuild connections, one supports efficiency and blood flow. They're experimental tools studied for very specific mechanisms. The real foundation of brain health after 40 still comes down to the basics: sleep, metabolic health, stress, and hormones at the cellular level. And that's the difference I see in clinic every single week. Patients who get real results aren't the ones who picked the best peptide. They're the ones who fixed what was happening at the cellular level first. That's why at Vive Wellness, we check your biomarkers before we ever reach for a prescription. So before you go chasing any of these four, find out what your cellular foundation actually looks like. Book a discovery call with my team through the link in the description below, and let's figure out together whether your problem is the signal or the soil.